always at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we're talking wide receivers. And the San Francisco 49ers have plenty of questions at the wide receiver position. And it's not that they're devoid of talent, but they have question marks because of injuries, because of suspensions, and because of young players who are unproven. And so the interesting part of trading away Deebo Samuel was that you really lost a lot of your veteran leadership on this team, but just veterans that you knew you could count on. So the 49ers are rebuilding this wide receiver room. And it'd be a lot easier if their number one wide receiver, Brandon Iayuk, wasn't injured. But the likelihood is Iayuk's not going to be ready for week one. And depending on who you listen to, it could be anywhere from after 4 games he's going to return to sometime in November. I don't think there's really a known date for Brandon Iayuk to return. But I do think it's very lofty to believe that Iayuk would be ready for week one. And maybe he will surprise everyone and he's going to come back and he's going to be ready to go. I do believe the 49ers are going to be very careful with him. They were careful with Talanoa Hufanga last year. And I think they're going to be careful to make sure Brandon Iayuk doesn't have another setback or doesn't have another injury. They want to make sure when Iayuk comes back, he's ready to roll. And that makes a lot of sense. Number one, you've invested a ton of money and capital into Brandon Iayuk. You have made sure he's going to be your number one wide receiver moving forward. Second of all, if you have any hopes of going to the playoffs and being able to do damage in the playoffs, Brandon Iayuk could be a big part of that. If he comes back sometime in November and he's right, and I'm saying November, I don't know that for sure. I'm just throwing out a date because that's kind of when Greenlaw came back, late November, early December. You throw out a player like Iayuk in that time, and all of a sudden you're hitting the ground running as you're pushing towards the playoffs and you're trying to win the division and secure a playoff spot. It could go a long way. That's a huge addition. That's like getting a midseason trade with one of the top wide receivers in the league. So the 49ers are going to be careful with that. And it looked like when the 49ers went into free agency that they targeted a player that could help get through that time period in Demarcus Robinson. However, Demarcus Robinson was arrested in December. He is looking at a potential suspension from the league office. Now, as of right now, we don't know what that suspension is going to be. 49ers reporter Matt Mayoko has stated that the belief is that the 49ers are expecting him to be suspended for 3 games. So with that being said, you're not going to have Brandon Iayuk through the first part of the season. You're not going to have Demarcus Robinson at least through the first 3 games of the season. So you have to figure some things out. And so what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to go player by player and talk the wide receiver position out. Who do we feel comfortable with? Who do we not feel comfortable with? Who is going to step into certain roles and who's not? And we're going to kind of try to break this thing down depth-wise for the 49ers. And by the end, we're going to come to a conclusion. Number one, if the 49ers do nothing, what their depth chart is going to look like in going into training camp, going into the regular season, and then also what it will possibly look like if they go out and they get somebody else. We might bring up a couple of names potentially they could target if they feel there's not enough depth at wide receiver, which I'm hoping we don't come to the conclusion that that is the case, because that would mean the 49ers need to go spend a little bit of money. Not like they don't have money, but I'm always a little bit curious about how a franchise spends money this late in the game. And do you want to overpay because you need a player knowing Iayuk is going to come back? So this is going to be an interesting dynamic. I hope you guys all lock in and get ready for this episode. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Belief Network, please give it a 5-star rating if you feel I deserve it. You don't have to do it the first time. Listen to the episode. Wait until later. Wait until you listen to another episode and decide. But if you do decide to give a rating, I'd appreciate a 5-star one. Thank you so much. And if you were going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, And we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action, the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With a large selection of odds on everything from MLB, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. So we talked a little bit about the impact of Brandon Iayuk being out. Now, the first thing that happens with Iayuk being out was actually felt last season. When Iayuk went down, the 49ers were void of a X wide receiver. And you might ask, what is an X wide receiver? Well, the X wide receiver is going to line up opposite of the tight end on the line of scrimmage away from the tackle. So that's who the X wide receiver is. Also, the X wide receiver is going to be in almost every single offensive set that there is a wide receiver. So if there's a wide receiver, your X receiver will be in, and he will be on the ball usually. There are some cases where it's not, but just to give you an idea, the X receiver also, because he's lined up on the line of scrimmage, has to be able to defeat press coverage. Those guys come up and get into his face. He has no space. If you're lined up in a Z, which is another predominant position when you're playing wide receiver, you do line up off the ball. You're on the tight end side, you line up off the ball, and you have a little bit of space. You're playing in an 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers. You might have a slot position, and that guy, he can play off the ball, and that will generate space. So there are opportunities for the 49ers to find an X receiver in place of Brandon Iayuk. But as you can tell, it's very important to find someone that has the skill set to do so. Now, last year, Jawan Jennings surprised all of us because he was able to handle the role of X receiver. He never played X receiver. And yet, when they put him out there, he excelled. He was able to make plays. Even though he lacks the natural acceleration, the speed, the ability to create separation using that type of his game, he still creates separation. He just finds ways to do it. And he was able to win some of those matchups. Now, a lot of times it's very contested. He's got guys all draped all over him. It's tight coverage. And his will to win and his will to compete is what gets him over the top. But early on in this season, it appears with Demarcus Robinson and Brandon Iayuk being out that Jawan Jennings is going to have to carry the X position again. And the 49ers have met with a couple of guys, and we'll talk about, Gabe Davis later on is a possible X receiver. But they didn't exactly go draft X receivers either. When you're talking about Jordan Watkins, he might be able to play X. That's going to be, something we're going to have to find out. That's going to be to be determined. And he's got the necessary speed, and I would love it if he was going to be able to do it. But how many 49ers rookie wide receivers translate immediately into big-time playing time? Now, we know Iayuk played his rookie season, had some good success, had some struggles. Deebo Samuel, he really came on at the end of his rookie season with how Kyle used him, being able to get him the ball in some screens, get him some fly sweeps, get him the ball in the crossers where he's really able to win. And we've seen Ricky Pierol have success last year as well, being able to fit into this wide receiver room. So it's not out of the question that a rookie wide receiver could step in. But I think it's most likely that the number one X receiver is going to be Jawan Jennings. So right now we're penciling in Jawan Jennings as number one on the depth chart, number one wide receiver at X. Next, we got to fill the Z role. And the most likely right now would have to be Ricky Pierol. Just looking to see what Ricky Pierol did last season, how he came on at the end of the year, how he had a big game as the season went on. I think it illustrated that he's going to be ready for the task. He's going to be up to it. And I think this is what the 49ers were hoping when they selected him 31st overall in the 2024 NFL draft, was a player that could step in eventually and take over for a Jawan Jennings or a Deebo Samuel, whoever the 49ers didn't have on their roster. And I don't believe they thought the Deebo was going to come down this year. I think they did believe it was going to be next year, but it happened, and you have a replacement ready to go. And Pierol's game is different from Deebo in a lot of capacities. Number one, he's not going to be able to do all the wide back stuff, right? You're not going to give this guy consistently carries out of the backfield. That's gone. He's not the best when it comes to screens. He can get you some yardage. He's not that he can't do it. He's just not going to do it at Debo's level. But he could get you 5-7 yards. All right. He's got some dynamic ability there. We saw him take a jet sweep last year, play that was called for Jacob Cowing. But anyways, he took it and he had a lot of success running on the edge. So I do believe there's an element to his game that he can do in that department. So don't expect a wide back part of his game when talking Pierol. But what you can expect is for a guy that competes over the middle of the field with those crossers, very much like Deebo Samuel, a guy that's good hands and can make good catches over the middle of the field. Could be an improvement. Deebo at times had struggles with drops, especially last year. So that could be huge. Ricky Pierol also has the ability to beat man-to-man coverage. That could give you two guys right now that could win against man coverage between Jawan Jennings and between Ricky Pierol. That is a definite advantage to having those two guys at X and Z. But I think Pierol also showed some dynamic ability when it came to being able to create with the ball in his hands, after the catch, yards after the catch. Look what he did at Tampa Bay. Makes the catch in the very tight window. Great throw by Brock. And then hits the accelerator and is able to get the ball into the end zone for a touchdown, an explosive touchdown that really helped the 49ers win that game against Tampa Bay last year. So I think Ricky Pierol fits in nice with the Z. He's a prototypical Z receiver in the Kyle Shanahan scheme. So you've got it set up, even with Iayuk out, who would be your X, even with Demarcus Robinson, who could play X and Z out, you've got two guys you feel comfortable with. But here's where the depth chart gets extremely interesting for the San Francisco 49ers. Last year, they brought in Jacob Cowing. They drafted him in the 4th round. So you've got Cowing, but what did Cowing show last year? He showed that he's very consistent when it comes to punts, receiving punts. We get some yards on punt return. He showed that. He showed moments and flashes, especially in preseason, where we saw him get vertical, and it's like, ooh, okay, I like that. But he also showed some inconsistencies when it came to learning the 49ers offense, knowing where to line up, where to shift, and just what he was supposed to do play to play. I think that is one of the concerns for the 49ers with Jacob Cowing. Now, George Kittle talked about how he's transformed his body, he's put on more size, and Jacob Cowing's a more big physical individual. And of course, it doesn't take much when you're 170 pounds. But if you can get a little bit bigger, you can play a little bit more physical, that could help you be able to create more separation on routes over the middle. That can help you break an extra tackle or two, be able to get more yak yardage. That could also help you hold up when it comes to blocking. So I think that when it comes to 49ers wide receiver 3, it's complete projection when talking about Jacob Cowing. We just don't know who Jacob Cowing is right now. I think we're all hopeful that Jacob Cowing is going to be wide receiver 3, but I'm not ready to put him in that category yet. I want to talk about the other guys who are competing for wide receiver 3. Now, of course, if the 49ers had Brandon Iayuk and Demarcus Robinson to go with Pierol and Jawan Jennings, we would not be talking about Jacob Cowing be wide receiver 3. We'd be probably talking about him being wide receiver 5. So that right now is a big part of why the 49ers are trying to figure out the depth and why it's a concern for a lot of people. So they drafted Jordan Watkins, and Watkins has a lot of speed. You get a guy at the end of the 4th round, same thing as Jacob Cowing, nearly identical picks. End of the 4th round pick, you go get another speedster. Jacob Cowing is a 4-3 guy. Jordan Watkins is a 4-3 guy. The difference between Watkins and Cowing has to be stature. Cowing is a little bit smaller. He's a little bit more frail. And I'm not saying frail in a negative sense. I'm just saying compared to Watkins, Watkins has more size on him. He's bigger up top, and especially with the legs. He's got a little bit more stockiness when it comes to the legs. So he's more built and capable of taking these shots over the middle, a more prototypical build when it comes to wide receiver than Jacob Cowing. So there's a little bit difference there. He right now is not a complete wide receiver either. Jordan Watkins wins with vertical routes down the field and creates separation there. But everything else you question about how good he is at running routes consistently. He can get open over the middle at times. He's got a decent feel for zone. But I'm seeing like a lot of his game has to continue to develop. And so I know that Jordan Watkins is potentially going to help this 49ers roster at some point. My question is when. I think we have more questions about Watkins as a rookie than we had about Jacob Cowing, and Cowing struggled. So I heard Jordan Watkins say in an interview that a coach for the 49ers told him this playbook is really tough. It's probably going to be difficult for you to get on the field in year one. So, what do we expect from Jordan Watkins? Well, I don't think we can expect much. I think we're all hopeful we're going to get something, right? We're all hoping that we're going to get somebody that can go out there and make some plays for this football team. Like I said, we've seen rookies be able to have some plays. Ronnie Bell made some plays in his rookie season, a lot of bad with the good, but he's another guy that was able to get out there. So, it's not out of the question that Jordan Watkins gets out there on the field and helps the 49ers. But is he wide receiver 3? I don't think so. I think that Jacob Cowing definitely would be ahead of Jordan Watkins when it comes to this competition for wide receiver 3. Now let's talk about the guys that are behind. And this is where it gets interesting because you have veterans as well. And I think you have to look at Trent Taylor. And I know when you say Trent Taylor, people get a little bit concerned because Trent Taylor's getting a little bit longer in the tooth, a 2017 draft pick of the 49ers, who the 49ers had let go at one point, and then he made his way back to the team last year. Now, he saw a limited role with the 49ers main roster. He was on the practice squad most of the year, and when he was brought up, it was because of injuries, usually to the special teams unit, where he is a very good receiver of a punt. I mean, the guy can secure a punt. He does a really good job with that. You're not going to get a lot of return game, but you're going to get that. Now, part of the reason that Trent Taylor has to be in this conversation is how comfortable Kyle Shanahan is with him. And they know things about Trent Taylor that they might not know about Jacob Cowing or about Jordan Watkins right now. Number one, he will line up in the right place. That is a guarantee. Trent Taylor knows what his role is. Trent Taylor will go mix it up with cornerbacks, safeties, and linebackers blocking. He will get physical. Whether he gets chucked or not, he's going to give you that. He's going to run good routes, and he's going to run the routes that he's supposed to run. So that about Trent Taylor. Those are things that the 49ers are going to value very highly when talking about a potential guy that helps early on in this season. The problem is there's a lot of negatives that go with that too. He's not dynamic the way that Cowing and Watkins are. He's not going to give you yak yardage the way, Watkins and Cowing are. So there are some drawbacks to it. You get a steady player, but you don't get any of the dynamics or any of the potential to be able to create separation consistently. He's going to sit down nice in his zone, make himself available. But I think there's some question marks there about him being wide receiver 3. Russell Gage, they brought him in last year, and Russell Gage, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, is another guy this is a guy that's been wide receiver 3 in the league. Not for the 49ers, but in the league. And so we've seen him play for Tampa Bay, the Falcons. He's been around. And so I think that there's a realistic thought process that Russell Gage could be in the mix because we've seen him be able to compete. He's been in the system for a full year now. Not really a full year, but he was with the 49ers last year in the practice squad, which means he has an understanding of this offense and he's going to have a chance. And I think he's a legit veteran option, especially early on in the season while you're trying to get guys like Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins to figure out how they fit within this system. So I think right now, Russell Gage and Jacob Cowing are my 2 leaders for wide receiver 3. And eventually I'm going to put these guys in order of how I think it is going into training camp. But right now I'm going to put that together. Then what about Tariq Owens? And last year, if you guys have been a part of the channel for a while, after rookie minicamp and watching what he did at rookie minicamp, there were some real struggles, especially with his tryout and him just getting in and out of his breaks, him rounding his routes. There was a lot of refinement that needed to happen with Tariq Owens. And that's to be expected. He hasn't been playing football very long. He's got the genes, right? He's got the football acumen because of his dad. But when it comes to actual skills and learning, no, he doesn't. And so there's a lot to like about Tariq Owens when you're talking about physicality, size, athleticism. But when it comes to actual football football intelligence, he's just behind the 8 ball. He's got to learn a lot of things. He had to learn how to become an NFL wide receiver. Now, the thing that makes him interesting is I know that everyone sees the Owens name, and there was a lot of reports last year that said he looked really great during his rookie minicamp. Those were not true. He had a lot of work to do. If you looked at him as a blank canvas that you could create with, then there's something there. And I think the 49ers did feel that way because when he got hurt, they reached an injury settlement with him, and they could have just let him move on and never bring him back. But during the season, they did elect to bring Tariq Owens back. He spent time on the practice squad, worked with the 49ers, and now he's coming in with a better understanding of what's expected of him, a better football IQ. He now knows how to run routes consistently, and he's a lot better getting in and out of his breaks. So there is an improvement from Tariq Owens. Is it enough for Tariq Owens to make this football team? I think that's a big question. Is it enough for him to be wide receiver 3? I think that's asking a ton of a player like Tariq Owens, and he's going to have to improve vastly compared to what he was last year. Like, this is going to have to be a huge change for him to be able to do that. So I would keep Russell Gage and I would keep Jacob Cowing ahead of Tariq Owens on the depth chart right now. I would even keep Trent Taylor ahead, even though I do like the idea of going with young wide receivers. I think when you're talking about being ready and being ready for playing time in the NFL and ready to go in weeks 1 through 3, those other guys are just more prepared. Now let's get into some of the most interesting guys on the entire team. I think it starts with Isaiah Hajins. Isaiah Hajins is so interesting for the 49ers because he's a big physical body who's had some success as a player that can convert. You know, he can get catches, big catches over the middle. He can make plays 7-8 yards. But he's a guy that definitely would be a Chris Conley type of player, right? He's going to help you on special teams. He's going to block his butt off, and he's going to be physical when you need him to be physical. He's going to make key catches when you need him to make key catches. And I think everyone loves that competition portion of the San Francisco 49ers from their wide receivers when they compete for extra yards and they go battle it out. And Isaiah Hajins definitely adds to that. Now, one of the things that's going to be interesting, though, is the role that he's going for. There's plenty of competition. We just talked about Tariq Owens. He's going to be in the mix for that bigger physical wide receiver, but also Isaiah Nayer, who I'm going to talk about in a second, he's also a part of that. So Hajins is a fun player. I think that I was very excited when the San Francisco 49ers decided that they were going to bring in and sign Isaiah Hajins because I thought, this is a potential to upgrade, the position. He's nearly 6'4", 200 pounds. So, you're talking about a guy that's, got the size and athleticism. He's only 26 years old. He's still young. He's been around the league a little bit. He spent time with Buffalo and the New York Giants. And, now he's going to be on the 49ers. So he's a guy that's made plays in the NFL. He's been able to make, some key plays for a football team. So lots of opportunities for him to potentially help this football team. He's a local guy. Comes from Oakley, California. That's right in our backyard. And he went to Oregon State. So I think that he's going to be one to watch in training camp. And I do think that he's further along than some of these other guys. So I'm going to put him up in that conversation right now as I go to build this depth chart. I'm going to build it in a second after I break down the final 2 wide receivers. First off, Isaiah Nayer, who I just did a breakdown for on Patreon. And I got to say, when you're talking skill set, Isaiah Nayer is one of the funnest guys, and you hope that he captures the ability that he has and is able to put that on the field, because if he does, the 49ers are going to have an absolutely dynamic player in Isaiah Nayer. 6'4", 220, 20 pounds bigger than Isaiah Hajins, but runs a 4.4, so he's faster than Isaiah Hajins as well. This size and speed combination doesn't come around very often, and it doesn't mean it's going to work out. Athletic ability is not enough. Size is not enough, but there's a lot of things to like there. Smoothness with the route running. I don't want to give it all down, break it all down for you, but if you want to get a full breakdown, go over on Patreon. I put it up. There's, video on it as well. Go check it out. But I think Nayer's got a shot to make this football team. Does that mean he's going to be wide receiver 3? No, I don't think so. But I do think he's got a shot, and I want to see him compete, because if he can make this team, that gives Brock Purdy a huge target to be able to go after. And the last one, of course, is Junior Bergen, the 49ers 7th round pick, who is being thrown into the wide receiver room. And yes, he did play wide receiver in college at Montana. So he played quarterback in high school. And when he went to Montana, and they were one of the main schools that recruited him, and I have a breakdown of Bergen over on Patreon as well. He went to Montana. He actually played in the backfield his freshman year a lot, had 500 yards rushing on the ground. So this is a guy that's got the ability to make plays. And because he was a former quarterback, he understands zone coverage and he understands where to sit in zone. He's very comfortable with that. So he's a guy that I still believe is ascending. And I know he was drafted mainly for special teams, but I don't think he's a complete throwaway. I think this is a very Ray McLeod type player that I want to see how he develops and how he looks against NFL prospects. It could be that it's not there, but I think that there's a little bit to like there when you're talking about some of the gadget things you can do with him, his ability to play in the backfield, the way he runs, his vision in open field. That makes him dynamic when it comes to yak yardage. He's not going to outrun anyone with the 4.5, but he's got the ability to make some people miss and get some yards. So he's interesting. But is he going to be a third wide receiver? No. So let's put this depth chart together now that we've went through it. And this is all in place until Demarcus Robinson and Brandon Iayuk come back. So once Iayuk and Demarcus Robinson come back, if Demarcus Robinson is suspended, it will be Iayuk 1. It will be Jawan Jennings 2. It will be Ricky Pierol 3. It will be Demarcus Robinson 4. That's how it'll be once they all come back. Now, what it is right now, heading into training camp, because those guys are going to be out, and Demarcus Robinson is going to practice the entire time. So Robinson is going to get some of those first team and second team reps. Just be expecting to hear that when you're talking training camp. He's going to get those. But what it would look like going in from training camp into the regular season, here it is training camp wise. Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pierol, they're 1 and 2. I think with the second unit, you're going to get Demarcus Robinson and Jacob Cowing. Remember, this is training camp, so Robinson can practice. I think Cowing will be up there. They're going to give him an opportunity. I think the next group behind them, because I'm just doing 2 receiver groups, is going to be Russell Gage and Trent Taylor. That's going to be interesting. And then after that, I think this is where we start having a little fun. I think it's going to be Tariq Owens and Isaiah Hajins together, and then Isaiah Nair and Junior Burgeon together. Remember, this is just the start of training camp. This is not what I think it's going to end up being. But when you go through reps, especially with young rookies, they watch, they learn, they develop. As they develop, they get moved up, and guys will get moved up. I expect to see Isaiah Nair go up. I expect to see Isaiah Hajins go up. Young guys that are going to move up. Now, when we get to the regular season, what is this depth chart going to look like? Well, I think Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pierol are going to start at X and Z. I think that is definitely going to happen. I think when it comes to wide receiver 3, I just don't know what we're going to get out of Jacob Cowing. I think that they're probably going to give him a shot, but I won't be shocked if it's one of the veterans, either Trent Taylor or Russell Gage, that end up getting one of those spots ahead of Jacob Cowing early on. But I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to go wide receiver 3 early on is going to be Jacob Cowing. And I could be talked out of this, but I think it's going to be Jacob Cowing as wide receiver 3. I think Russell Gage will probably be wide receiver 4. And that's tough to say. Jordan Watkins will have to be wide receiver 5. And then it comes down to Hajins and Burgeon. And I could be convinced that Russell Gage is out. I'm not even that sure on it. This is one of the most interesting rooms that there is, because I think Cowing has to be 3, and then after that, it's either one of those veterans. And I think that you're going to have Hajins who's going to compete and Gage who's going to compete. And I think one of the veterans makes the team, and then they're going to try to keep some young guys. So this is one of those ones that's hard to figure out because there's so many guys that are equal. And I know a lot of people are going to want to keep Tariq Owens. You're going to have to try to figure out how to keep Isaiah Nair. If you don't want to lose him, he'll probably get picked up on the open market. So Cowing makes sense. Watkins has to be on this team. I think he'll be wide receiver 5, unless you're keeping veterans, and he could be, towards the bottom. But you're not going to really give up on a 4th round pick in his rookie season. He also could be a candidate for a Kyle Shanahan injury. Hate to say it. Now, I did promise that we were going to mention a couple of guys, if they need to go wide receiver. And I think just talking it out, with Cowing not being proven, Watkins not being proven, Nair not being proven, the 49ers might need to go the vet route when it comes to adding a player. My problem is when you look at the estimated market value, there is not a lot of cheap guys. And Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper are still expensive. The 49ers did meet with Gabe Davis, but I don't know what his number's like. And so the question marks for the 49ers are, do you just go with someone cheap, or you wait and see what your young guys can do? And if your young guys aren't doing a great job, then bring in a veteran. And I think that might be the best way to go. Evaluate Jacob Cowing through OTAs, minicamp, and see what happens. Because there's guys like Nelson Aguilar and DJ Chark and Tyler Boyd that are going to be available that you could bring in on the cheap. But I think you want to make sure those young guys are ready first. And so I don't think a signing of Cooper or Davis or Allen are imminent. And I still have question marks about Allen and Cooper and whether those are going to make a lot of sense unless the 49ers are willing to spend money. And I don't think they want to spend big money for those guys, both of them on the plus side of 30. Gabriel Davis is still 26 years old. He is coming off a meniscus, but depending on what the financial numbers look like, that could be a legit option for the 49ers. But I think right now, just looking at the wide receiver depth chart, it's going to be Jawan Jennings, it's going to be Ricky Pierol, it's going to be Jacob Cowing, and then after that, I think it's going to be a veteran. And I think it'll be either Russell Gage, Trent Taylor, or Isaiah Hajins, one of them. And then they'll keep a couple young guys because they want those guys on the roster until Demarcus Robinson and Brandon Iayuk come back. So that would be my guess. Who wins between those battles? I think that's going to be fun to figure out, but it's a fun conversation. I thank you guys all for coming through. Let me know in the comment section what you think the depth chart is going to look like. Do you believe that it's going to be Jacob Cowing number 3, or do you think it's going to be Jordan Watkins or one of the veterans? I'm really curious to see what you think, and how good is Isaiah Nair going to be? It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're this episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.